Hi, my name is Dorian, or Leviathan to my friends, and I'm an eldritch abomination lurking in the corners of your attic. And I've had a very strange week. Recently, I've been finishing up some commissions, and boy, sometimes it can get really bad. After dealing with a particularly rough commission, I think I've thoroughly been inspired to talk about the various horror stories that I've come across and some that you've come across as well. So sit back and relax with this nice speed paint while I read off some art horror stories and give a little bit of advice. When I was but an inexperienced artist lad just vibing out there, I had some friends/roommates that wanted to make a TTRPG from the ground up, which is really hard to do, if you can imagine. For those who don't know, a TTRPG is like D&D or Pathfinder or Monster of the Week, and I love D&D a lot, and I really did back then too, so I jumped at the opportunity to be an artist within a new TTRPG that looked like it could possibly get its feet off of the ground. Plus, at the time, this was my D&D group, and I lived with them. I thought I could really make this happen for myself, and I did not want to continue to be in the job that I was in. Unfortunately, this would scar me for life. It became a canon event, it seems. At the time of agreeing to be the sole artist on this project, red flag, and help make graphics, red flag, character designs, red flag, and concept art for the TTRPG, red flag. I was also working full-time at a popular gaming store. Mind you, the guy who was running the TTRPG had been my previous manager, and one of my roommates at the time was another employee at the game store. So they definitely understood my frustration when all I ever did was work horrible hours and come home crying because of my job. It was awful, genuinely. So when my weekends were full of more work that I wasn't being paid for, yes, they had not paid me, not even upfront, and there wasn't a contract either, I was also playing in their TTRPG. Like all of their alpha tests. I was in their live play podcast for it as well, which will come in later. So I got fed up with it really fast. What broke the camel's back was that I had to move back to my parents' home during the middle of this fiasco because I couldn't pay my rent, as my hours had been cut due to mental health issues, specifically anxiety and what I know now was autism and ADHD. My parents lived pretty far out of town, so my internet wasn't as good as it could have been, understandably. This made my audio terrible, or at least my audio connection, and it ended up that my roommates wanted me to come over to the house to re-record the episode of the TTRPG on my only day off, supposedly because my audio sounded like I was in a wind tunnel. Great. I broke down and finally said no. After months of stress and being abandoned at a con by them as well, I had to walk through about 2 miles of summer heat in a cosplay to go get my other friend, and they didn't drop me off, which they could have done, but I digress. Anyway, I told them unless I was going to be paid for my art and my time, I wasn't going to continue to be in their TTRPG project. This spiraled into a terrible situation where I was told more or less to unalive myself, and also that nobody actually ever needed me, and that I had been terrible to work with while my roommate had been manager. Mind you, this was told to me by a man close to 30, and I was 20 or about 19. Yeah. Anyway, I blocked all of those involved and found out a few months later that both of my characters had been taken care of. If you know, you know, instead of just writing me out of the show. They also used my art for a few weeks after I asked them to take it down, which was great and fun. They also accused me of stealing a controller, a PS3 controller as well, which I specifically was given by the manager at the time because I asked for it because it was pink and my roommate thought it was hers. Of all things to be petty about. Anyway, the moral of this story is to always get half or full up front, get a contract drawn up, and always be wary of getting signed on a project with your friends, especially when you know there isn't a lot of money backing the project. There are commercial rates that you should look up and make sure you're taking into account within your own work as well, as commission rates just aren't what someone should charge for commercial work. Now, for my story from this week, personally, I think it's fine when somebody has a very specific idea of what they want their character to look like or the situation in which their illustration needs to be done, but only when they have character references that are highly specific to go along with their request, which was not done in this situation. Piece was just a half-body sketch of their character, which should have taken me about 2 to 3 weeks, if that, once I started to really get into drawing. It took me a full month to get through this sketch, and not because I wasn't working on it, but because they wanted multiple changes. And when I say multiple, I mean upwards of 20. At first it was 5 pose concepts, 2 of which I sent at the beginning, and they wanted more after that. I was annoyed, but felt fine accommodating this, only for the client to pick one of the first 2 poses, which could have saved me a whole day of going back and forth on things. Mind you, the person didn't actually know what pose they wanted for this character, and told me that I could choose 1 or 2 to build off of. Then it just became a mess of quote-unquote tweaks and the client acting as if they were an art director. Don't get me wrong, if you want your character to look a certain way, that's fine, but this person did not have the right references. It was always that I used the wrong reference or that nobody had drawn it correctly in the first place, and they had not told me in advance which references to use and which references not to use, nor which parts that they liked or which parts they didn't like. And they never sent me the fixes that they needed all at once. It would be over the course of hours or days, and I always had to be present for them. I don't know why, but I always did, which is a red flag. In the end, this commission is not something I would want to post because the character design, in my opinion, is awful, and the person was incredibly rude regardless of if they knew it or not. They asked me to change up my style multiple times, and even when I defended myself, they didn't seem particularly interested in the fact that it was my style that they wanted changed. They just kind of left it at that. If you didn't like my style in the first place, why would you commission me? I also used a reference they specifically wanted me to use for colors, like literally color picked from it, and they wanted it tweaked. I can literally not make this shit up, guys. The lesson from this is that you need to have it in your TOS, terms of service, that you charge for changes past a certain point. For me, it's line art, or after several changes have already been made. And clients, please make sure you have accurate character references. It makes everything so much easier for both parties. Also, do not ask someone to change up their style because you don't like the way something looks or because you're being pedantic. It's rude. I also asked for your commission horror stories over on Instagram, and a couple of you shared them with me. These will be kept anonymous still, of course, and I thank you for sending these in. First up, from Anon 1, we have underpaid for a giant D&D commission. I took half up front on a massive comm and everything was good. DM for the D&D party didn't tell me or the rest of the D&D party that the bill would be split amongst the other players. I only got paid remotely close to what was given as a quote because one player felt bad for the stress and gave me a big tip. First of all, I am so sorry you had to deal with this. I think it's on the client to communicate how things are going to be paid when clearly we deal a lot in things like PayPal. So if they have accommodations they need to have met, they need to tell the artist. Definitely sounds like a lot of stuff wasn't shared between the whole group that needed to pay you, and that's quite a shame. You deserve to be paid for the work that you did. I think it's important to have something in your TOS that says if you have done a certain amount of work, they do not get a refund. And if it gets to a point where you've done the work but they don't pay you for the rest of the commission, they don't get the commission work that you've done past the point of like half or whatever, or even at all. I wish a very bad day upon the people who did this to you, and I wish a very amazing day for you. Anon 2 sent in, I never commissioned them, but I had an ex-friend in real life who was tracing some big artists and using it as comms. Deplorable behavior, truly. Not demure. This is what AI artists evolve from, I think. You cannot do this and get away with it, especially now. It's copyright infringement and art theft. I'm really glad you're no longer friends with them because this would be very, very bad if it happened in this day and age. Our final Anon sent in, random DM. Can you draw my whole family? Every picture? There were 15. 700 pounds by next week. Needless to say, I did not take it. She literally followed me 5 minutes prior. Smells like a scam. You dodged a bullet on this, for sure. There's a lot of problems with NFT bros or weirdos or scammers or even just bots coming into artist DMs to scam them out of money. Depending on the type of illustrations they want, 700 pound for 15 pictures in a week isn't viable either. That would definitely take longer. And personally, I charge 150 pound for a one-person illustration, so that's gonna be more than 700 pound for a rush job that would normally take me a year or so. If you see these DMs, ignore them. They're not real at all and a massive problem. Thank you for vibing with me while I vented. If you like my content, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button. Maybe comment down below to help a little bit with the algorithm if you want. If you super like my content, consider becoming a patron or a channel member. We also have a really cool store with a bunch of merch and fan art and things down in the description below. Other than that, just remember not to look in your attic. I currently am training a feral pack of eldritch nightmares to answer mean emails for me. And they're a little bitey, if I'm honest. Thank you to Jacques, Herald of the Dark Roast, Meg, Exarch of the Golden Egg, High Artisan Anonymous B, Great Alpha Wolf Squilliam William, Nairuz, Seer of Rosy Mercy, Ghost, Infernal Collector of the Damned, Golden Paladin Court, Isabella, Redeemer of Bad Himbos, Keeper of the Lapin Warren, Robin, Most Royal of all the Rats, Ethereal Consort of House Vicarian, Fungal Sovereign Taz, Exalted Curator Wick, the Under-Elf of Delphinia, Paragon of Starlight, an impossible amount of rat babies, Divine Herald Jordan, Estrella, Sage of the Outer Realms, Wretched Sauce of House Worcestershire, Champion Pallypunk of the Immortal Valley, Taylor of Macabre Coney Livery, Eternal Apostle Austin, the Contingent of Fables, the Eminence of Light, Bunny, Exarch of the Ornate Tomb, Harley the Sanguinous, Grand Overlord Silas, Being of Exalted Sunlight, Delegate of Clan Latineurs, Eternal Consul Puja, High Magi Katie, the Herald of Wrens, Knight Susan of the Milkiest Order, Great Seer Clare, and Sir Matthew, Guardian of the Preserved Apiary.